This is Chelsea Perkins, a former U.S. Coast Guard service member, known to most by the alias Selena Savage. On the outside, she seemed like a woman with a strange and unusual life path. Military service, then motherhood, and later work on the OnlyFans platform. Like it or not, she had a remarkable talent for drawing attention while at the same time hiding her dark secrets right in plain sight. But behind the carefully built image was much more an obsessive idea, a thirst for revenge, and a bloody story that even unfolded on federal property. That's where Matthew Dunmire comes into the picture. A man loved by friends and family, a father with a past of his own that was no less dark. Whatever tied him to Chelsea, and no matter how tangled their past may have been, all of it transformed the woman into a true monster. Her actions led not only to the deaths of several people, but also dragged old, long-forgotten secrets back to the surface. Hi friends, before we get started, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. And don't forget to write in the comments about your favorite food you eat while watching YouTube videos. I'd really love to read about your tastes. Now, let's begin. All the events lead us to Ohio, to a small town near Hudson. That's where a man named Matthew Dunmire lived. He was your typical Midwestern guy, free-spirited, a music lover, a guitarist, and a social person. Born on the 26th of November 1989 in Virginia, he grew up a cheerful and lively boy, listening to Frank Zappa with his dad and finding his passion for music at an early age. Friends described him as generous and loyal, always ready to help. In adulthood, Matthew had a long-term relationship, 2 children, and a close circle of friends he saw almost every day. His life in the small town outside Hudson seemed calm and stable. That's why, when he suddenly stopped answering messages and didn't show up where he was supposed to be, everyone knew something was wrong. On the morning of the 6th of March 2021, Matthew disappeared under strange circumstances. But the real beginning of the story should be traced back to the evening of March 5. At the Tiki Underground bar, where he often met friends and coworkers, Matthew mentioned he had plans for the weekend. A friend from Virginia was supposed to visit him, and they decided to meet up. Instead of the usual coffee or dinner, they had booked a house 40 miles north of Hudson. They planned to spend the night there and head out for a hike the next day. Around 6 in the evening, while still sitting with his friends over a drink, Matthew received a text on his phone. He glanced at his phone, then looked up and told his friends that the girl he had been talking to online was already waiting for him. After that, he stood up, grabbed his coat, and headed for the exit. His boss, wanting to be polite, followed him out to say goodbye before the weekend. They exchanged a few words and shook hands. At that moment, the boss noticed a white smart car parked with its taillights on. The car had come for Matthew, and behind the wheel was a woman with chestnut hair. He couldn't see much more, but he did notice that Matthew clearly lit up when he saw her. Waving goodbye to his boss, Matthew got into the passenger seat, and the car quickly drove off toward Akron-Cleveland Road, heading for the big city. At the time, it looked like just an ordinary date, but no one could have guessed that his boss would become the last close person to see Matthew alive. That evening and even the next morning, Matthew was still in touch. But eventually, the messages stopped. The last one he sent was at 10:29 to his girlfriend. "Okay, see you soon." Clearly, he planned to return home that same day, but that never happened. No replies came, calls went unanswered, and he never showed up. His girlfriend, who had already been upset with him, started to worry. Soon, even friends realized no one could reach Matt. The next day, the concern turned into real fear. This was completely out of character for him. He had 2 children at home, and everyone knew Matthew would never let them down. And now, everyone was unsettled by the unknown woman. Strange going off with a school friend and never coming back. Questions only grew. Who was she? And most importantly, what happened after she picked up Matthew? That woman was Chelsea Perkins. It turned out they had known each other back in their school days in Virginia. How close they had been then is unknown, but the fact that they knew each other later proved crucial. After graduating in 2009, Chelsea decided to join the U.S. Coast Guard. By 19, she was already serving at a Houston station, part of a small boat crew holding the rank of seaman. Her military career was short, just 3 years, and in March 2012, she left the service. But that time wasn't wasted. It was there she met a colleague she fell in love with. The couple married, soon had 2 children, and settled in Northern Virginia. It seemed like life was going perfectly. Family, kids, stability. But behind closed doors, things were very different. And very soon, the whole world would find out. Chelsea began living a double life and eventually made a choice that nothing could hide. She became a model on the OnlyFans platform. Honestly, digging into the biography of an OnlyFans model isn't an easy task. All I wanted were a few facts about her life and some ordinary photos. But it seemed Chelsea had entirely different plans. So now my eyes deserve a psychologist, and my browser search history probably needs a priest. After leaving the service, Chelsea completely changed course heading into the adult industry. She adopted the stage name Selena Savage and turned it into her own brand. But before you rush to Google that name, I'm serious. Don't. Instead, check out her official Instagram account, Selena Savage Official, where she once actively shared updates from her life and promoted her content. You could see her love for motorcycles, hairless cats, and tattoos there. Despite the huge gap between military service and her new career, Chelsea managed to use her online persona as a source of popularity and income. At the start of 2021, right around the time Matthew disappeared, she was a married woman and a mother of 2. Online, she remained Selena Savage. Those who knew her personally described Chelsea as a very emotional person, sometimes even with a questionable reputation for behavior. One former Coast Guard classmate called her crazy, while another called her weird. However, it's worth noting, by 2021, Chelsea had no criminal record and no documented incidents of aggression. No arrests, no charges, no lawsuits. After Matthew left Virginia and moved to Ohio, their relationship gradually faded. Everything changed only once in 2017, when they crossed paths by chance. What role that encounter played we'll get to. But after that contact, their paths diverged again, and they didn't communicate for 4 years. Then, in February 2021, Chelsea made her presence known again. She added Matthew as a friend on Facebook. It seemed like a simple move, maybe just nostalgia. They started messaging, and Chelsea mentioned she planned a trip through Cleveland. Her route was northwest of Detroit for a tattoo appointment, so she suggested they meet while she was nearby. Matthew agreed, well, why not? It sounded like a simple meeting between old acquaintances, but in reality, it turned out to be the last time he was seen alive. Friends and colleagues knew he was seeing someone, either an old friend or a woman he met online, but no one knew her name, and there were no contacts to trace her. When Matthew stopped responding, everyone raised the alarm. He was officially declared missing. But the police had no leads, no clue where he had gone. That changed 3 days later, on the 9th of March 2021, at 11 a.m., when officers from the Valley View Police Department received a call at the Terra Vista Nature Preserve within the Cayuga Valley National Park. Hikers walking near an old cemetery stumbled upon a horrifying scene. Just off the forest road, they found the body of a young man. He was dressed in black, a leather jacket, hoodie, jeans, boots, and fingerless gloves. Nearby lay a half-empty bottle of Aquafina. In his pocket, the police found an ID that confirmed the worst the man was Matthew Dunmeyer. Although the body was sent for an autopsy, the cause of death was obvious immediately. A gunshot to the back of the head. Accident or self-defense was out of the question. This was murder. When family and friends heard the news, grief overwhelmed them. The whole community felt the loss, but the hardest hit was his mother, Tommy Lynn. And yet, the story didn't end there. Once the initial shock subsided, everyone started talking about the mysterious woman Matthew had planned to spend the weekend with. Who was she? Why were they near the cemetery? And what happened between them? At that time, no one had answers. But soon the FBI got involved and the investigation produced unexpected results. First, though, it's worth going back to Chelsea. It seems unbelievable that an old acquaintance could have a motive for murder, but in 2017 she had gone to the police with a troubling claim. Chelsea alleged that Matthew had raped her and demanded that a case be opened. The details of that story are still unclear. All that's known is that the police investigated the complaint but found no evidence, not even circumstantial. That doesn't mean nothing happened, but legally, the case fell apart. Matthew categorically denied any wrongdoing. For him, the accusations were a shock. He was stunned and appalled. He said everything had been consensual and that Chelsea had fabricated the story for her own reasons. His friends couldn't believe it either. They knew him as a calm, kind person who wouldn't even harm a fly. So what really happened? There's no answer, and probably never will be. But one thing is certain. This episode left a deep mark on Chelsea. She couldn't let it go for a long time, haunted by the thought that Matthew had escaped punishment. Over time, that resentment turned into a full-blown obsession. So, she did have a motive. Old scores she could never let go. But the main question was, could the FBI prove her guilt? As it turned out later, they could. The evidence was surprisingly simple, almost hard to believe. On the evening of March 5, at 5:46 p.m., cameras at the toll booth on the Ohio Highway captured a white smart car exiting at the Akron ramp. This was the very road that leads to the underground bar Tiki, the place Matthew had been that evening. Just a few minutes later, at 6 p.m., Matthew received a message. He said goodbye to his coworkers and left with his boss. The boss later told investigators that he saw Matthew get into a small white or silver car, driven by a woman with chestnut hair. This information was confirmed by surveillance cameras inside the bar. Later, the license plate was traced to a car registered to Chelsea's husband, whose name is withheld out of respect. About 15 minutes later, the same car was spotted at a BP gas station, where Matthew went inside to buy cigarettes, a red energy drink, and a bottle of Aquafina, which would later become a key piece of evidence. Data from different cameras, GPS, and license plate readers showed that the pair headed north and arrived at a rental on Ashbury Avenue in East Cleveland. The apartment was booked under Chelsea Perkins' name, and payment was made with her card. She didn't even try to hide. That same evening, Verizon store cameras recorded Chelsea and Matthew entering Potbelly Sandwich Shop together before returning to the rental. Mobile tower data confirmed this as well. The next morning, at 9:03 a.m., Matthew sent his girlfriend a message. "I guess you're not missing me. And probably mad. I already argued with this girl anyway, so I hope that makes you feel better." At 11:09 a.m., he opened Google Maps and plotted a route to Terra Vista Natural Study Area, a quiet trail spot in Cayuga Valley National Park. GPS confirmed his arrival at 9:45 a.m., and Chelsea's phone was pinged by a tower at 9:59. What happened next between them in the woods is unknown. But at 10:29 a.m., Matthew sent his girlfriend one last message. "Okay, see you in a bit." That meeting was never meant to happen. Soon after, he disappeared forever. Although the pair had stayed out of sight, their presence didn't go unnoticed. Just minutes later, another couple walking nearby heard a gunshot in the trees. Alarmed, they ran straight back to the parking lot and saw Chelsea's white smart car waiting there. A little later, another couple arrived at the parking lot, unaware of what had happened. As they got out of their car and walked up the trail, they spotted Chelsea near the cemetery right where Matthew's body would later be found. Now there were not just two, but four witnesses who could confirm that Chelsea had been there at the exact moment Matthew died. But the most interesting part came next. Remember that bottle of water he bought at the gas station? It turned out he had taken it with him to the cemetery. Investigators found it right next to his body. When they ran tests, they discovered DNA from both Matthew and Chelsea on the bottle. And that wasn't all. Her biological material was also found under his nails and on intimate areas. In other words, the evidence spoke for itself. The bullet recovered from the back of Matthew's head was a 9mm round, and the gun registered to Chelsea a Springfield Armory 9mm pistol. The coincidences were way too many to ignore. So what did Chelsea do after Matthew died? The road told the story. Toll system records showed that by 1 p.m., she was heading north, got on the highway near North Ridgeville, and continued west toward Toledo. From there, she crossed the state line into Michigan. While Matthew's body remained in the park, she went to a tattoo shop and got a new tattoo like a trophy after the horrific act. She even posted about it on Instagram, sharing a photo with the caption, "What a wonderful weekend. Loved my time at the new studio with such an amazing artist. Proud." And yes, that photo was taken just a few hours after the murder. The next day, surveillance cameras and automatic license plate readers tracked her return home, where she continued living as if nothing had happened. But by March 30, investigators' patience ran out. They arrived at Chelsea's house in Arlington with a search warrant. Inside, in her backpack, they found exactly what they had hoped for. The Springfield Armory 9mm pistol, and next to it, her ID. Ballistics tests confirmed that bullets fired from this gun matched the one recovered from Matthew's head. Ignoring this was impossible. There's also a chilling detail worth mentioning. 3 days before the tragedy, Chelsea posted on Facebook, "The dead don't tell stories." And she made that post the very same day she reconnected with Matthew. By then, the police had everything. Witnesses, DNA, the weapon, and a motive that would send chills down anyone's spine. Yet despite the case being so clear, her arrest was delayed. Whether out of caution or to gather even more evidence, no one knows. But one fact remained. Chelsea was still free at that time. This is where the story turns into a true nightmare with unbelievable twists. Matthew's mother, Tommy Lynn, was broken with grief. Her son was dead, and his killer was still out there, free. And when the police delayed arresting the suspect, her patience snapped. She decided to take justice into her own hands. Tommy began her own investigation. But the deeper she dug into the case, the more her mind couldn't handle it. She convinced herself that one of her son's ex-girlfriends was responsible for his death. And while she wasn't entirely wrong, that obsession began to eat her alive. Sleepless nights became the norm. She spent hours scrutinizing every little detail, searching for clues, running dozens of scenarios through her mind. Friends turned away. Family couldn't reach her. Eventually, her quest for justice escalated into a dangerous plan for revenge. Together with her husband, she bought a fake UPS courier uniform, loaded up the family car, and headed to Washington, convinced that Matthew's killer lived there. When Tommy knocked on the door, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the gun hidden under her jacket. In her mind, there was no doubt. This woman had to pay in blood, and she fired twice into the abdomen. But fate had other plans. The door wasn't opened by Chelsea Perkins. Standing there was a stranger who only vaguely resembled her and had nothing to do with the tragedy. She was an innocent victim. Tommy Lynn had shot a person who had done nothing wrong. With the gun in her hands, in the hallway of a stranger's house, her plan collapsed in an instant. The woman fled, and the police were already on her trail, but it was too late. Tommy Lynn decided she had no way out. She raised the gun to her temple and pulled the trigger. In that moment, the Dunmeyer family lost not just a son, but a mother, a second victim of the same darkness. Meanwhile, Chelsea continued acting as if nothing had happened, posting revealing photos on social media, living her life as usual. But her time was running out. On the 9th of December 2021, she was finally arrested on suspicion of murder. Neighbors peeked nervously from behind curtains, watching her being led away in handcuffs. She remained just as cold and silent as she had been that day at the cemetery. At the police station, detectives laid out all the evidence before her. The white smart car, the water bottle from the gas station, DNA on Matthew's body, the bullet matching the gun. The case was far too clear to ignore. Despite all the evidence, Chelsea stubbornly maintained her innocence. She swore she hadn't killed Matthew and couldn't explain how her DNA ended up on his body. For her friends, it was a complete shock. Yes, she openly hated him, but no one could have imagined it would go this far. There had been no serious warning signs before. Chelsea had no criminal record, no history of aggression, no diagnoses. On the surface, she seemed like a perfectly stable person, though she was living a double life under the stage name Selena Savage. Ironically, it was that very stage name that worked against her. Investigators were confident this was a straightforward case, one that would quickly lead to a conviction, because this wasn't some uncontrolled outburst. She had thought it all through, rented a place, traveled over 300 miles to meet him, and even planned a tattoo session after the crime. To the detectives, it was clear premeditated, cold-blooded murder. After her arrest, the court denied Chelsea bail, so she remained in custody awaiting trial. But before the hearings began, prosecutors offered her a deal: plead guilty to murder and receive 27 to 31 years. That would have meant getting out around age 65. She refused, sticking to her version. But not for long. Eventually, Chelsea changed her stance, and on the 27th of May 2025, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. If the court approves the deal, she'll face 25 years, roughly a quarter less than initially offered. It seems Chelsea realized she had no chance of winning. The evidence was just too strong, from Coast Guard service to OnlyFans, and now to a prison cell. An incredible fall. And if you add in the story of revenge and Tommy Lynn's death, that's a plot even Hollywood would envy. According to Chelsea herself, her motive was revenge. But another question arises. Why, then, did she sleep with Matthew that night? Her DNA was found on intimate areas of his body. That meant they were physically close shortly before she shot him. It's hard to make sense of the logic, given that Chelsea claimed he had wronged her years earlier. I don't have the right to doubt her words, but I can't help asking. Would you go to bed with someone who had caused you that kind of pain? It's another strange twist that makes the story even more complicated. Chelsea lived two lives. One was public, smiles, new tattoos, photos of ordinary moments, and some not-so-decent ones too. The other was hidden, dark, where she decided to take justice into her own hands instead of waiting for the courts. And what's shocking is that she actually believed she could get away with it. Her plan had so many holes, it's shocking she didn't see them. And that photo, taken on the day of the murder, still sticks in your mind. After that, there were dozens more smiling, posing, acting like nothing happened. It's terrifying. Sometimes, the most dangerous people don't look like monsters at all. And on that note, I'll end this story. I want to hear your thoughts. Was it revenge or cold-blooded murder? Or maybe something even more complicated? Write your answers in the comments. Thanks for watching all the way through. Take care of yourselves, look out for your loved ones, and stay curious. See you next time.